I'm sure you've experienced some crazy things too that, or maybe magical, just by understanding this stuff on the level that you do.
When we're trying to create something mystical, magical, from the unknown, not all phenomena of the universe has to be, or maybe can ever be, fully explained, because we ourselves are part of the mystery that we're trying to solve. And the quantum field exists whether you're aware of it or not. But Simon, with most people thinking the same thoughts that they do every day, which are electrical impulses, those create corresponding chemicals, which are emotions. They manifest themselves as feelings. And those feelings lead to more like thoughts, as you know, and that creates our patterns, behaviors. Yet still people are hoping that something is going to suddenly shift. But it's like, how can change happen if we don't change? And the best way to change our life is to change our energy.
What is up, Mindset Hackers? Thank you so much for joining me here today. I've got another episode with a total badass guest. I am so excited for this interview. Today, I have Kinga Gorski. She is a specialist at helping spiritual-minded entrepreneurs become magnetic high performers by leveraging the power of their subconscious mind. She's a high-performance coach, a meditation and yoga teacher. I am so excited to have you here on this podcast. How are you doing today, Kinga?
Stellar, so good. Like just vibrating, like beyond the screen.
I know. Like, just for context, Mindset Hackers, before we hit the record button, it was just, this always happens. Your vibe attracts your tribe. I always say this. And then, I've never met you in person, but now we're face to face, at least on Zoom. And we just start going, we start talking about all this cool stuff. And I always have this feeling like, damn it, like I should have hit record, because it just goes into this really organic, like this high vibe state. And I have to share this too. The reason why I asked you to be on my podcast is I was looking at some of your content, and I was just so impressed with it because you have a truly deeper knowledge of the subconscious mind. And I love that you love talking about the blend of spirituality with science, because I think that's so important. I do feel like science can sometimes be a blind spot because we think we're all scientific and we know everything. And, when I was younger, we used to judge things like the law of attraction and manifestation and meditation. Now it's starting to become a lot more common, a lot more accepted, but there's a lot of stuff that's coming to help us really understand that. So I'm glad to have you here. I'm going to shut up for a minute. I want to ask you about your backstory. Catch me up, okay? This is the badass that I know right now, but tell me about how you became this superhero of the subconscious mind.
Oh man. Well, to take it way back, I think the most formative years are truly what shape us. And of course, we can have emotionally charged and shocking events that happen at any time in our life that really impact us. But for me, I think what spurred my personal development journey is my relationship with my dad was not a healthy one. We've been estranged since I was 18. Unfortunately, while there were some good positive moments, he was angry, a bit tyrannical, physically and verbally abusive. And that was until I moved out, like till I was 17, 18, and I moved out when I was 19. And just, I had so much rage actually when I was younger, like white hot, like it's not even describable, just the intensity. And I don't know if you've ever felt that, but it's come out in a lot of ways that weren't healthy. And inevitably, it expressed itself in my relationships, where I learned just in the last few years that I grew up with what's called a fearful avoidant attachment style, also known as a disorganized attachment style, where it's like you yearn and crave for connection and depth. But then also you have deep wounding and get triggered very easily. And you have this tendency and desire to control things and have them be perfect and feel a level of significance that you didn't have when you were younger. I felt very unseen and like I had to be invisible to not rock the boat. And so in my self-discovery along my later years, I learned that I think that's a big reason why I was very creative and imaginative and just had this like just wild, mystical, inspired thinking all the time, because I was always able to strangely, even at such a young age, know that it was never my fault. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with this guy, but like the world is my oyster. And when I get old enough, when I get out of here, I am able to just really bloom and fly and achieve anything that is not going to keep me restricted to the confines of my current situation. And I don't know if that's just like a blessing that I was able to have or something that I was able to cultivate over time. But before my current career, I ended up in the film industry from about 11 to 25. And so that allowed me to pursue connection through the art of storytelling and acting and film. And once I had a little bit of success there, I was obsessed. I thought I was going to go to the Oscars, but the thing with pursuing a dream, especially for like 12 years, is the dream changes sometimes. So you're not left wondering what if. It's like I was doing the damn thing and I'm like, I've had enough. I want to do something else. So that led me fast forward to being 26. I got my yoga teacher training. And then I thought the simple life would be enough for me, but it didn't take long for my natural entrepreneurial spirit to come through. And I started teaching classes, hosting workshops. And then I had a very, very dark night of the soul a few years later where I split up with my boyfriend at the time, now in a very healthy, loving relationship for almost 2 years, which I'm very blessed with. But at that time, very dark night of the soul, lost relationship, lost my house, had to leave one of my studios, impacted my finances. I was 29 weeks away from my 30th birthday, moved in with my mom for a year, and I just like felt like I was dying. I felt like I was fucking dying. And I'm like, how did I get here? So hardworking, so like full of zest and joie de vivre. And I achieved a lot. Working with private clients at that time and corporate clients, but still there was just like something like a big plateau that I just, and that literally like burst me open to heal. And then that's when I actually started meditating and working more deeply with subconscious programming. And like, I wanted to become someone new, still taking the best parts of myself, but leaving the shell of who I was behind and using that like just crazy, painful, shattering setback to be the launching pad, the springboard for like my biggest, baddest comeback yet. And here we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, that sounds so similar to me. Like I probably about the same time when I had my come to Jesus moment where I had to start really figuring things out. So tell me this. So this moment that culminated when you were 29, where you're just like, where everything hit the fan. Do you feel like your subconscious somehow brought you to that moment?
That's a great question. The thing about the subconscious is that it's always looking out for us. It is always holding our highest ideals and the best for ourselves in mind. And so you can call this the subconscious leading us to that place. That was also, I'm not sure if you participate in astrology in any point, but that was like also the time of my Saturn return, which is like between the ages of 28 and 30 in our cyclical birth year or birth cycle, and it just shakes shit right up. So definitely I had this like deep knowing that there were, while every relationship has incredible, wonderful elements to it, that's why I was in that one for 3.5 years. But there was just so much incongruence and things that weren't aligned, especially the longer we were together, the more we realized we kind of had to go this way. And yeah, when circumstances finally, it just came to that apex where it's like it's time to go, and just having to deal with the consequences of that decision. But I remember the moment that I said the words, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's time. The first thought, the quiet thought in my head was, oh my God, I'm finally free. So, and that wasn't like a conscious thing. It was just like, you could call it intuition, hearing your inner self, your higher self speaking to you. But even in spite of that newfound freedom, oh my God, I got dragged through the fucking trenches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you do have to rebuild yourself.
Yeah, and I feel like that sometimes that's a good thing. It's like a transformation. It was interesting because at the time, like I had a very similar come to Jesus moment where I was like shit hit the fan, and I just remember like I was looking like I had accumulated all this debt, and I never really had any major tragic events in my life, but I felt like I had been given a lot of opportunity, but like I crashed at one point. And there was even a relationship that I was in that, there was nothing wrong with the relationship, but somehow I was destroying that. And same with my finances. And like now, knowing about the subconscious mind, I realized that there was this feeling of unworthiness that I didn't even know was there at the time that was blowing things up. And I really had to do a lot of rebuilding. So it's cool to hear that you've been on that same journey and about the same time as I did, and that you have rebuilt that and you've learned so much for that. So how did you start learning about the subconscious mind?
Well, I've been a huge fan, as I know you are too, of Dr. Joe Dispenza since I was 24. That was when I had my spiritual awakening. And I've been studying just on my own time, just kind of like teaching yoga, being creative, and then just watching videos on like quantum physics just for shits and giggles. um, but then after that really challenging point, it's crazy that we have to find ourselves often at rock bottom before we realize like, oh my God, things have to change. I cannot go on like this. Like I can't. It's like you're broken open. And when you're faced to see the rawness of yourself in such a helpless and hopeless place of what it feels like at the time. And I remember thinking like, I know consciously that like no one can help me. This has to be something that like I pick myself up, scrape myself off the floor and start to again rebuild. And so that took me deeper into as I mentioned, meditation. Like 2 months after I moved in with my mom, and I was just going through that initial couple months of haze and fog. And just like, I remember laying on her couch in the living room sideways in the middle of the day, staring into the abyss of the living room and just thinking like, this is what it must feel like to be dying. And so shortly after that, it was just an intuitive like download that I just needed to meditate. So with no prior experience, I started waking up at 5 a.m. club. I did it for a month, started meditating right out of the gate for like 40 minutes, an hour, just sitting in the dark on her little ottoman in front of the electric fireplace, similar to the one that I have back here, with a blanket wrapped around me and just getting into brainwave state, because videos that I'd watched and just even years back, it really started to come back to the foreground of my mind that like your subconscious brain can change your life. You can actually shift your brainwave state to become more suggestible to positive seeds and ideas planted that can take hold and eventually come to harvest and come to manifest in your waking physical experience of your life. And I knew that this project, if you will, of Kinga at this point, I don't know, 5.0 was going to be truly an inside job. And the thing is, the conscious mind cannot help the subconscious mind. The conscious mind can process up to 50 bits of information per second, which is a lot. Every second, 50 bits of information. The subconscious mind can process up to 11 million bits of information per second. And so the subconscious programming, your emotional body, is the true top dog. It's the leader. When that change starts to come to fruition on our physical external plane, it's not a process of the conscious mind. That indicates that what's now becoming second nature, and you're able to do it more effortlessly in your conscious waking experience, it's actually change that has first integrated in the subconscious level that is now being able to be seen and shown and experienced.
Oh, I love that, because I think that our conscious mind thinks that this is all that we are seeing, and this is what I love about subconscious is we're walking around and everything around us is being absorbed in our mind, but we have things that take our attention because of that smaller part of our conscious mind that's able to process that. But that's not the whole story, is it? Like our subconscious is really absorbing and aware of so many things that we're not, like our conscious mind doesn't even know that it exists inside of there. Is that true?
Absolutely. I mean, and the subconscious mind is all knowing. I mean, even things that we repress that are maybe too painful for people to deal with, like trauma, guilt, shame, that can be even stored in the depths of the subconscious, which is like the unconscious mind, where it can be like repressed, forgotten memories, but they're always there. They can be brought up through the subconscious. And I find that there's so much I can say on this question. I'll try to keep a straight train of thought. The subconscious mind, as we talked about, is always looking out for our best interests. So when we dip into our deeper recesses of our mind, we can simply ask ourselves in a conscious way, speaking into our subconscious, please show me and guide me and only bring up what I'm prepared to see and receive today. And so a lot of people are afraid of what they'll find. And
Mm.
so know that you can handle it. And it can be processed. Obviously, if there's any, intense trauma or things that you feel you're not able to guide yourself through yourself, go to a trusted professional, someone who can obviously walk alongside you on the path. But there's so much you can do just on your own if only you're willing to make the leap. And a lot of the time it's scarier looking over the edge than it is actually making the jump.
That's so fascinating that you said that, because I sometimes wonder that myself, like, is there stuff that I don't even know is there? And my wife and I, we took in a boy and adopted him. But there was a lot of turmoil that was caused with my wife's mother, and she was very volatile towards us and just very, she did a lot of things to really like drag us down. And it's like I kind of forgot I was doing a mindset training on abundance, and I was talking about forgiveness. And I couldn't even remember that I had to forgive anybody. Like I totally blacked out the whole situation. And maybe it was because I forgave her, but maybe it was my subconscious mind that was protecting me from that whole situation. But I remember talking about forgiveness and saying, yeah, I'm good because I've forgiven everybody. And I totally forgot about that situation. Either I had subconsciously flushed it, or maybe it's still there, like protecting me from those wounds. So that's interesting, because I can relate to that. I'm very curious. Well, I shouldn't say very, because I think I'm a little bit afraid too to want to see if there's stuff in there that I don't want to see. But I here's what I get passionate about is, what is it there that the subconscious knows that we can unlock when it comes to creating a beautiful future that we want? Do you feel like we have this supercomputer that's absorbing all the stuff that we need to unlock that future? Is it already there? Is it sometimes not a matter of going out to gain new skills, but to tap into that subconscious mind and find what's already inside?
Ah, I think that answer is twofold. I think, of course, we have to gain more competence and therefore confidence in learning new skills and applying ourselves. And even just beyond manifestation of like thinking, feeling, wanting to visualize and draw stuff in, it's fun to participate in the 3D world around us. We're not just going to be sitting here like a guru sage wanting to levitate and have our fingers snap and things fall out of the sky. Our hedonic adaptation response, we would be so used to that instant gratification. As nice as it sounds, it'd be cool for a while, but we would be over it real freaking quick. And we gain real, true, lasting, enduring happiness, satisfaction, fulfillment, pleasure, those dopamine hits, not instantaneously, but when we actually apply first effort toward truly accomplishing something that's meaningful and worthwhile. And in combination with that external effort, it's about knowing that we're not actually limited. Too many people feel limited by what they can see, by what their current circumstances showing them in their physical reality. And so it's not about deluding ourselves. I think that's a misconception people have about manifestation. It's just like thinking you're in some world that you're not in. But with our cognitive faculties, we can actually suspend for a moment the situation as is, as it's appearing, and allow ourselves to use our imaginal faculties. It's not imaginatory, it's not like fake, but imaginal, using our imagination to create new memories from our future and live into that future from that future place, as opposed to on our way to it, or basing future possibilities on past probabilities. So I think it's twofold. It's remembering that we're not actually limited. We are truly limitless, and our brain is a supercomputer. I believe reading in a book recently that the state of our brain is like equivalent to what the internet was in 2007.
Mm,
Processing
so
capacity.
powerful.
Yeah, and so
That's
it
it.
is.
That excites me.
Yeah, yeah, truly. And the more that we exercise our mind and make it more malleable and like stretch it because of its plasticity, and the more we achieve, the more we apply ourselves, the more we know that we are actually limitless. We just have to remember that we are, and let the workings of the subconscious cast their little spells, if you will.
Mm. Let's talk about this. We were kind of diving into this before we hit the record button, but what I'm fascinated by is, I kind of got into the personal development scene back in the mid 90s. So it's nothing new to me, but I remember like into the 2000s, like I started following Joe Dispenza, like the learning a little bit about quantum physics and the quantum field, learning about the law of attraction. And I used to think that like the law of attraction was like, yeah, you just hang around with high performers and then you're removing yourself from like toxic situations to an extent and maybe putting yourself in line with opportunities. But I didn't realize that there was so much more depth to the law of attraction, to manifestation, to quantum physics. But what's been really cool is seeing stuff like meditation and visualization and journaling, these things that at one point people were like, oh, that's kind of woo, or they felt like, I even felt weird talking about it a couple of years ago. Now I'm like, okay, I can explain this, but I want to hear from you some of the, like your thoughts on that. Like where are you starting to see alignment when it comes to science or things that we can understand from a more scientific level, and the stuff that at one point, and maybe it still is, but I might be in a bubble right now because I'm like, yeah, this shit's mainstream. But like, tell me about let's talk about the spirituality and the woo stuff and how that converges with like people who are like, oh, I kind of want to get on this journey, but I feel weird about that stuff. Like, how do we help create some like coherence between those two worlds?
Yeah. Well, yeah, as we were talking about a little bit before, the term woo is definitely still floating around, but I mean, I don't think it's woo. It's real. It truly is, because most people who hear about manifestation and energetics, and it's like, along more of the mainstream train of thought, all they hear typically is thoughts create your reality. Just feel good and ignore the rest and watch things fall out of the sky. There's a term that's been
Mm,
dubbed sofa metaphysics, where you just think you can sit on your couch, watch Netflix all day, try to feel
right.
all right, and then just watch as like your greatest dreams to come to unfold in your reality. Well, as nice as it would be, maybe sometimes it's
Yeah, wishful thinking, I call that. JP Sears did a funny skit on the law of attraction about just like, oh, I wish the Ferrari would come. Oh, it's finally here after 8 years. Oh, I
yeah,
love
he's
that.
hilarious.
What
He's
did you
so
call that? Sofa?
sofa metaphysics.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't come up with the term, but I picked it up along the way, and it definitely stuck with me. And so,
Oh, I love
as,
that.
as opposed to practicing sofa metaphysics, thankfully, there are scientists and researchers like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, and I mean, countless others who have gone out of their way to research these phenomena of the universe. And there are so many phenomena that we just simply accept, that we are so familiar with. Like, I mean, clouds in the sky, rainbows, like just the fact that we're on the spinning rock in the atmosphere, and like we don't question it because it just is. But even then, if you actually like slow down and give it some thought, we have a 1 in 400 trillion chance of being incarnate on this planet as a human being. I mean, the chances are just unbelievably tremendously tiny. And so these pioneers are finally bringing language, scientific language that we're able to assign to the mystical experiences that we've been having, even including things like spontaneous remission and different healing and things truly appearing seemingly out of nowhere. But I've had things come to manifest in my own life, which I journaled and wrote about so clearly, so passionately, like 3 years prior or days prior for like some smaller things. But allowing ourselves to journal, to visualize, to meditate, to start to reprogram our subconscious mind, to understand not only what we're doing, but really why we're doing it, how it works. It's getting our conscious brain on board so we can influence our subconscious self, as opposed to when we're trying to incorporate these new practices. Sure, it may sound nice to try to believe that we can change ourselves from the inside out. But if that's not truly what we think on the conscious level, our analytical, hypercritical, judgmental mind calls bullshit immediately, and it axes our progress before we can even get started. So to your term of getting more in coherence with everything, it's about getting our conscious and subconscious brain on board, mind, body coherence, because they are truly inseparable.
Oh, I love hearing that. Here's something that's interesting. So I think that we get caught up in this. Like I was always taught, I don't know what they teach these days in school, but when I was growing up, they said that we had five senses. We touch, we smell, we taste, we hear, we see. Five senses, right? But you and I know that there's a sense of frequency, of feeling, of energy. And I want you to go into that because we were kind of going that way. And I was like, we got to hit record. But like, talk to me about energetic frequencies. I think you said something about like heart and mind coherence. I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that. That I get that on a peripheral level, but it hasn't been one of my deep areas of understanding. But I am very aware. Like I feel like you and I are on this call. There's no doubt that we're on this call because there was this energetic frequency that brought you and I together. And I feel that so often when I get with a guest, like, it's just like, okay, this was totally your vibe attracts your tribe. So I want to get your thoughts on that, like energetic frequencies, heart and mind coherence. Tell me what some of your thoughts on that.
Yes. So we were talking about the Heart Math Institute. It was founded in 1991, I believe, and they study the mind body connection, heart brain coherence. And coherence means order, rhythm, harmony, wholeness. So creating more symmetry between all elements of our body as opposed to feeling disconnected, which is why we may want to do something consciously, like change a habit, for example, but then we just don't freaking do it. So clearly there's misalignment, incongruence there. And so they have measured, the Heart Math Institute studies that we have different energetic frequencies and electromagnetic fields radiating and emanating from our bodies, our organs. We have what's called an aura. More scientific, contemporary language is, again, electromagnetic field. And the heart is 60 times more potent in its electromagnetic field than, say, the brain. So we're all about the brain, the mind, the head knows, but it's like truly listen to the whispers of the heart, the yearning. I always say an intuition is like our sixth sense. So it can sound so cheesy to listen to your heart, look inside, but like legit, yes, honor the mind, the head, but like don't disregard what your gut, the gut brain is telling you.
Right.
Oh, and it can emanate up to 1.5 meters on each side, so up to 3 meters wide, which is up to 9 feet wide, which is huge. So you can immediately tell, like when you walk into a group, a large party or a conference, like people you naturally gravitate to, your maybe romantic partner, people you're interested in, your good friends, even strangers. Like you can tell, or if someone's like a little shady, you know to stay away. So
Totally.
your body speaks to you and everything is resonating on such a cellular level. Everything, even solids, are at their most fundamental state in vibration, like beneath the subatomic particles. When you start to just break everything down into like the most microscopic tiny parts, it's just, that's where string theory in physics comes from. It's just beyond being like a tiny bit of matter. Think of like a tiny marble. when you have nothing left, no tangible stuff, it's just these little like vibrating strings that the vibration, this oscillation, eventually creates things that we can, with our five senses, see, touch, taste, smell, and hear. So truly, when we start to go beyond our 3D reality and start to transcend the fourth dimension of time and start to be more conscious creators of our life from the fifth dimension, which is where the quantum field resides, you cannot experience it with your five senses because you transcend your senses. There's no physical stuff on Earth to imagine taking away, like the ocean, the continents, the world itself, all the galaxies, the stars, the sun, the moon, just everything. It's like, this is what we can call the void, but it's not empty. It's full of energy and frequency and light that carries frequency and information. And so we tap into it by sensing, not with our senses. And all sensing is just being aware and just noticing what's going on around you. So it is a practice. And I'm sure to any of your listeners hearing this for the first time or quite new to it, they might be, what the fuck?
Yeah,
but,
right.
But there is a process, and it's actually super simple and accessible. It just takes wrapping your mind around these new concepts that most people don't talk about and they're just not aware of. So they write it off as woo-woo. That's where it comes from. But it's truly just lack of understanding, which is our work now, yours, mine, and all the other, spiritual entrepreneurs and like-minded people trying to bring this knowledge to a more public, accessible place, is bringing that scientific language to allow people to get more firm footing with their conscious minds so they can actually understand it, apply it, assign more meaning as to why they're doing these practices, and truly allow their subconscious brain to change their life.
That makes so much sense. I love that breakdown because it's like you were talking about your journey. And you're like, I just started meditating and then things started changing. And isn't that the truth? Like people because right when you meditate, you're kind of getting away to an extent, getting away from some of your five senses and more into the, that energetic sixth, I guess you'd call it a sixth sense, or at least that's what I would call it. But you get away from the five senses to an extent when you meditate, and you start tapping into some of that feeling, the energetic field. Now, here's a question I'm not sure if I've ever brought this up on my podcast, but like the quantum field. Okay, let's break that shit down. I had the hardest time trying to explain quantum physics to somebody in the past. I think I have a better way of doing that now. And I kind of talk about vibrational frequencies and how they attract certain people, opportunities, tools, because they're resonating on the same level. But how would you explain to somebody who is just stepping in this, that is getting some of that resistance, like what is the quantum field? What is quantum physics, and what is the quantum field?
Yeah, so quantum, the root word is quanta, which is like a tiny packet of energy. And so that's like truly what the word means when it's broken down. And so it is the study of energy on the most tiniest fundamental level. And the building blocks of our entire known universe, everything that we actually can see, like everything in front of us, is made up of atoms. When you break atoms down, and you can think of it as like a tiny marble, again, it's like an actual bit of matter, which is like tangible stuff. And so you bust that marble open, it has all these even tinier marbles, which are like protons, electrons, neutrons, and you bust those marbles open and they have even tinier subatomic particles like quarks, and then you try to bust those open, and that's when we get energy. And so really that indicates that, again, everything that is solid and we can see in front of us in its most fundamental state is energy. And so quantum physics is the study of that energy. And to your question of someone who's skeptical, maybe just starting out, how do we start to understand it? Well, first of all, I will honor that and say, fair enough. I have to face my own skepticism every day and remind myself and continue to learn and listen to these talks and research experiments and studies of the greater world around us, because our 3D material world is going to be the first thing to try to like root us and anchor us back down to like, this is just the way that it is. But it's truly not. There's so much more possibility beyond what we can just experience with the five senses. And so to make it more accessible, I'm certainly not the first person to use the analogy, but it is so good and so apropos, is that we are surrounded as we speak with things that we cannot see: radio waves, different frequencies of light that are not visible. In fact, everything that you see around you, Simon, your room, the wall, the photos, the books, everything, all the colors, the textures, the material, even if you have a window, you can like look outside, the air, the trees, nature, all of that is only 0.0035% of the spectrum of visible light. That's not even half a percent.
Love that.
So there are things that we can't see, like infrared, UV ray, X-ray, microwaves, and more, gamma waves, that they're measurable, they exist, but we cannot see or experience them, without certain conditions being present and necessary. And so if we were to turn on a radio, which is a transducer takes one form of energy and transduces it, changes it, shifts it to another. So you turn on a radio, that takes the sound waves and turns it into something that we can experience with our senses, being the resonant quality of sound vibration. And so if you twist that dial, it's either going to be scratchy and out of tune because it hasn't connected to like a proper wave of frequency that you are looking for in the sense of being a specific radio station. And if you tweak it a little bit more, it's going to go to a different radio station. And so, for example, if you are wanting to attract certain experiences in your life, you are on a particular radio wave. And if it's not something that you are enjoying and experiencing, and it's on a lower, more dense radio wave, the higher energy that we become, faster frequency is more elevated emotion. It's been researched and shown that more expressive emotions like bliss, wholeness, love, gratitude, appreciation, those emotions have higher frequency. And so when we are able to guide ourselves to a better feeling state, not by repressing any negative emotions that need to be dealt with, but when we are able to actually live into a place of more coherence, having our mind and body in tune, experiencing more wholeness in our emotions, that is going to lead us to being naturally higher frequency. And we all broadcast our unique electromagnetic signal and receive it in kind out into the field. And so like, there's no way we're not communicating and receiving our intentions, but the difference is whether people are doing it consciously or subconsciously.
Right. There's an energetic frequency behind everything. The way that I like to describe this is, like vibe high. Like this is all you need to know. Stay as much as you can in an elevated state. The ones that she just talked about, right? Happiness, joy, giving, like enlightenment. Try and vibe high. Find, there's different methods that you can get it. We're probably not going to go into that on this episode, but vibe high and know where you want to go. Set an intention. Cast that intention out into the quantum field, vibe high, and you will start bringing that into your reality, into your experience. That it's like so crazy, all the things that seem to come that I experience because of that simple method. And I love how you broke that down. It is, I'm sure you've experienced some crazy things too, that, or maybe magical, just by understanding this stuff on the level that you do.
Yeah, it definitely does have that quality of being a mystical experience. But the thing is, like, when we're trying to create something, let's say mystical, magical, from the unknown, like, not all phenomena of the universe has to be, or maybe can ever be, fully explained, because we ourselves are part of the mystery that we're trying to solve. And we can explain it enough to be able to benefit from it. Like, I can't tell you how my iPhone works, how my car engine works, all the workings of my tech and whatnot, even all of the crazy functions of the human body that allow us to be us and so evolved. But like, I can understand it enough to, use it to my benefit and to create a better life for myself. And the quantum field exists whether you're aware of it or not. So it's like, you can choose to, be only operating within the limited circumstances of your life, but nothing's ever going to change. And so many people want things to change. But Simon, with most people, thinking the same thoughts that they do every day, which are electrical impulses. And those electrical impulses that fire across our nerves, our synapses in our brain, and we also have those cells in our heart, those create corresponding chemical emotions that manifest in the form of, those create corresponding chemicals, which are emotions. They manifest themselves as feelings. And those feelings lead to more like thoughts, as you know, and that creates our patterns, behaviors, habits. So we perform the same actions, and then so we continue on every single day the same way that we typically do. We get triggered by the same stuff that we're not doing our part to heal. And so with all of these things repeating themselves day in and day out, yet still people are hoping that something is going to suddenly shift. But it's like, how can change happen if we don't change? And the best way to change our life is to change our energy, like truly, on like more than just this sort of like ethereal thing that we can't really like grasp. It's truly changing from the inside out. And so I think that's where like toxic positivity comes from, of just like, think good thoughts, try to feel good, da da da, and just, ignore everything else. But no, I think beneath all of that is heal.
Yeah, and there's a frequency. Like, here's an example of this. Like, you could take a sales rep and be like, okay, just knock out more phone calls. Like, just dial more, and you will have more people that you get a hold of, and then you'll have more presentations, and therefore like increase your close rate. But then there's somebody that's like vibing high, that's just like, I'm gonna pick up the phone and like find the right person that's right for me. And there's this energetic frequency of confidence, of serving, of helping, that is different from somebody that is just like dialing for dollars, or like, I want to go make a bunch of calls so I can get this for me. It has a much different like energetic frequency behind that. And that's how I explain like why somebody can dial like as much as they want and not get a lot of, certainly there's talent to that, right? But I do think that like you've got to really understand like what frequency are you broadcasting behind that. Like, are you expecting something to fail? Are you if you've got skepticism too, and you're always looking for something to fail, like if you're kind of interested in this stuff, but you're just like, well, you're looking for a reason to like discount it, then that's what you'll find. But if you open up your mind and broadcast the frequency of like excitement, of like, what could this unlock for me? Like, there's a beautiful world. So I have one more question for you before we, I want to like highlight you and tell my audience where they can find you. But my last question is like, what's the buy-in for somebody? If somebody, is listening to this podcast, they're like, you guys, that sounds like way, way overwhelming, or way like I don't know. If I want to dive down this rabbit hole, what's in it? What's on the other side for somebody? Like, what can this unlock if they're willing to do the work?
Your greatest potential, my friend. Honestly, if you've been trying to change someone out there and it's just been like roadblock after roadblock, plateau, you have such a desire to shift, and like you hold this higher vision of yourself, and it just doesn't seem to come to fruition for whatever reason. Maybe other drama is starting to unfold along, your journey toward being a successful entrepreneur, going after certain goals. And it's like, all of a sudden your relationship goes to shit, or your, stuff's happening at your work or whatever. It's like certain stuff will come up as self-protection mechanisms that we don't even realize unless we immerse ourselves in the work. And the quickest, most efficient, easiest process to start to truly change from the inside out, shift on a results, action, belief, and identity level, to reinvent ourselves, to live into the person that we know we can be, that we know we are in our heart of hearts. Your subconscious brain can change your life. And the easiest way to do that is truly through meditation. No one's asking you to run a mile, just sit and
Right. People act like it's pulling teeth. I get pumped. That's how I wake up in the morning. I know I'm an alarm, but I get up at like 5 in the morning because I'm like so fucking pumped to get into my meditation and vision. Such a great way to start the day. But I think you and I, we can both say that this stuff has the potential to change everything. It is, just like she said, just start with meditation, just some peaceful time with yourself. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can, follow Kinga, and she has ways to teach you some better ways to meditate, but just get started on it. And let me turn the time over to you. Tell me like where people can find you. I know you have some programs. I know that I think you coach some people in Hollywood, didn't you? But how do people find, like, tell me more about you, where people can find you.
No, thanks for the opportunity to share. I've had the blessing to work with some awesome clients. From Hollywood celebrities to CEOs, and working with people who run multi-billion-dollar companies, all the way down to your local grandmother, and all boys private school, and just working like within the community and beyond. So very, very blessed. I'm findable on all platforms at Kinga Gorski. My name is spelled KingaGorski. And my favorites are Instagram, and I will be kicking off YouTube later this year. But, I'm excited to post our podcast chat on there as a little, aperitif before the main course. So definitely would be happy to connect with you there. I am also teaching an online course called Zen High Performance Method that was birthed out of my dark night of the soul 4.5 years ago, which has literally allowed me to reinvent myself. And so that is my gift and my contribution from my own suffering turned evolution turned best comeback yet, and allowing and guiding you to do the same. So typically working with spiritual minded health practitioners, holistic wellness professionals, creative entrepreneurs, and again, using the power of the subconscious brain to leverage your own potential, overcome fears and obstacles as it relates to going towards your goals, changing from the inside out, really becoming your most self-actualized version of yourself, and ultimately creating and attracting your ideal reality.
That's so beautiful. I will leave some notes in the description. We'll leave all your social profiles and get you connected with my audience. And I just want to say thank you so much. That was so fun. We could go on for like another hour about this, and we'll definitely have to jam on some different topics, because I know that you and I have a lot in common. Our life stories, and just the way that we feel about how passionate we are about helping people just, to find that highest potential. And it's just so worth it. So Mindset Hackers, here's your call to action. Make sure you connect with Kinga. And then also, please, I would love it if you would send this episode to somebody that you know that can use this message. I would love it if you pull out your phone right now, and please drop a rating if you're on Apple or Spotify. That helps me grow this podcast. I've got a lot of really cool stuff coming down the pipeline, and we'll definitely have Kinga back. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much, Simon.